Hello all, welcome aboard. Before we start, I'd like to mention that I have a new animated short film in production, Isambard Inkblot and the Volcanoes of Venus, which is a sequel to last year's big animation, Isambard Inkblot and the Canals of Mars. If you like this video, please check out some of my animations as well, and if you'd like to help me produce more, I have a Ko-Fi as well as a Patreon. Any support is welcome, even just sharing my videos with a friend helps. Now we shall begin. I have had experience with a fair amount of railroad equipment, steam engines of various types, and other historic machinery. The first locomotive I ever operated was a General Electric center cab on the South Branch Valley Railroad in West Virginia. I was about 12. Just last year, this silly horse cartoonist was given the throttle of a locomotive on the Talyllyn Railway in Wales. But the question today I raise is this. If I were on Sodor, which locomotive would I want to crew daily? The boring answer is whichever engine is on the roster for my shift. Unfortunately, the train crews don't get to pick. Alright, but if it were my honest pick out of any of the standard gauge engines to drive day in, day out on Sodor, it would be any of the diesels.
This fleet of mainline diesel-electric locomotives is carrying out more efficiently the work once done by several times the number of steam locomotives.
Especially the diesel electrics. Not nearly as exciting as the steam engines, granted, but for simply getting a job done and going home without needing to wash off coal dust, the smooth, immediate power of the diesel electric is second only to pure electric locomotives. Here is an English Electric Type 4. Now this would be fantastic for a daily service. These diesel electrics were used on the East Coast Main Line for frontline passenger service, but were also used for hauling freight and served British Rail for a very long time. And, hey, wait a minute. Where's he going? Alright, what diesels are left? Unfortunately, if we're not counting the many Class 08 diesel shunters, because you could not pay me enough to work a shift with diesel, Sodor has only 2 resident diesel electrics. And they're both kind of underwhelming. Between Boco and Derrick, as an American who likes center cab engines, I lean towards Derrick. I like the visibility that you get from a center cab, while also feeling much safer than being right at the front. He reminds me a bit of the GE center cabs I've experienced in real life, like my character Roger here. An advantage of this type of diesel is that there are 2 separate prime movers. For lighter work, you may only need one engine running. If one engine does fail, it's still possible to get home using the other one. Unfortunately, the specific engines used inside Derrick were supposed to be used in lightweight rail cars with hydraulic transmissions, and these Paxman diesel engines are not at all up to the job of running an electric transmission and pulling a freight train. These things tended to have camshaft and cylinder head problems, and because Sodor uses steam-heated coaches, Derrick can't pull passenger trains in winter at all because he has no steam generator. However, Clayton Engineering, the company that built Derrick, did have plans to include a steam heating unit by putting it in the middle of the cab because there's nowhere else for it to go. No thank you on this one. So that leaves us with the other one. And what about Boco, the Metrovic? Granted, he has 5 traction motors, he would be able to put a lot of power down, but much like Derrick, the Crosley diesel engine inside Boco is pretty awful. So awful, in fact, that the similar A-class diesels, built for the Irish railways, which also had Crosley engines, had theirs removed and replaced with its imported General Motors EMD 645 engines, and from then on, the Irish railways almost exclusively bought EMD locomotives. In the Island of Sodor book, it said that Sir Topham Hatt managed to fix Boco's engine, so I suppose Boco also has one of these EMD 645 engines, and he sounds like this.
The diesel looked up. "Do you mind?" "Yes," said Bill. "I do. I want my cars back." "These are mine," said the diesel. "Go away."
Now, the EMD 645 is a pretty reliable prime mover. It's got 5 traction motors. He sounds excellent. One minor fault remains with Boca, though. The wraparound windows on the front of the cab tend to fall off. I think it would be a bit unfortunate to be booming along at 60 at the head of the midnight freight train and have the windshield suddenly drop in your lap. All right, I'll get on to the big question. Which of the standard gauge steam locomotives would I daily if I were working on Sodor? Now, there's a lot of options to choose from here. Sodor has a wide variety of standard gauge steam power from all across the UK and beyond. Which would I pick? Let's see. It's Murdoch. The answer is Murdoch. Now, why is that? Murdoch is a late model steam locomotive and has all of the mod cons. Now, granted, I personally prefer the look and feel of late 19th century steam locomotives, with their clean lines, ornate looks, spindly proportions, and more artistic design sensibilities. The comparative ease of access on these later types of steam engines, though, simply can't be beat. What do I mean by that? This is where my personal preference as an American steam locomotive enthusiast comes into it. Let's look at Edward for an example. Edward is a very kind old gentleman. He's wise, he's always willing to lend a wheel, and I'm sure he'd be very pleasant to work with. But then, at some point during the day, his moving parts are going to need oil, which involves crawling down between the frames. You see, a lot of UK engines, especially 19th century engines like this, and a lot of the Thomas characters, have almost all of their valve gear, piston rods, and the associated 100 or so oiling points down between the frames. In real life, I'm a very small and thin person, about the size and shape of a 19th century worker, and yet I would be hard-pressed to actually get my hands, let alone an oil can, down in there to reach some of these oiling points. Some of the oil pots on these inside motion engines are impossible to reach without a pit.
Edward is impossible, he grumbled to the others. He clanks about like a lot of old iron.
So, Edward is the nicest engine ever, but if I were asked to crawl underneath once or twice a day to top up all these oiling points, oh, blimey. And the same goes for James, Thomas, Duck, Neville, Molly, Stanley, and Donald and Douglas. But not Toby, strangely. Toby has all of his valve gear on the outside, just hidden behind the tin skirt. Toby would be pretty cool. Come to think of it, maybe that's why James is grumpy all the time. I have to make a distinction here. I, Rocky, would have a hard time with inside valve gear because I have bones and I can't bend in certain ways. My character Isambard Inkblot, on the other hand, he loves his proper-looking, elegant inside cylinder machines. He's entirely made of ink, completely gelatinous, so he has no trouble at all getting between the frames on his live steamers, which is part of why he likes his London North Western and Great Western Railway engine so much, and also why no human would be able to work on some of his engines. Alright, well, what about Gordon? Looks like all of Gordon's valve gear's on the outside, you would think. But Sir Nigel Gresley, in his infinite wisdom, gave him a third cylinder that's also down between the frames. Granted, the valve gear for it is on the outside, so there's not that many oiling points in the middle, but granted, I would still have to crawl underneath and oil that. And also, I wouldn't trust Gordon to hold still while I'm doing that.
Gordon, said his driver, a special train's coming and where to pull it. Is it coaches or trucks? Trucks, said his driver. Trucks, said Gordon. He moved slowly forward.
We've seen how many times he argues with his crew, rides roughly on purpose. Yeah, so even if that oiling point wasn't a problem, it's Gordon. Although he does have the best whistle. Alright then, how about Henry? Henry's motion is all on the outside. He's also a very pragmatic design. The Class 5s were used for freight and passenger work. They can do a bit of everything. Henry also has a pretty good temperament. Yeah, he seems like a decent bloke. But Murdoch has some features that Henry doesn't. Murdoch was built after World War II, and was built during a labor shortage on Britain's railways, and so he's designed with several steam engine innovations, which came from the US, which, combined with British design practice, make for a much nicer engine for the crew to operate that is a lot less physically demanding. Some of the things that he has a self-cleaning smoke box with screens.
The BR standards have self-cleaning smoke boxes, but over the last 12 to 16 days, a small pile of ash, in lumps too large to pass out through the screens, has collected in the front of the smoke box.
His tender rides on Timken roller bearings. Roller freight! He has a rocking fire grate, an automatic coal pusher in the tender, and some of his type even had an automatic stoker. All he needs is a power reverser and a feed water heater, and he's up to Lima Locomotive Works superpower standards. And we haven't even gotten into the excellent cab. On most British locomotives, I say this very politely, the cab seems to be an afterthought. Look what HGI did here. We have this drop-dead gorgeous 442 that pulls well, steams well, has tall driving wheels for high speeds. There's great genius in the design here, and then you get to the cab. Then the Great Western Railway, George Jackson Churchward didn't even try here. The cab roof only covers the backhead. Granted, the journey times are much shorter in Britain compared to other places around the world, so it's not unreasonable to expect the engine crew to stand most of the time and be exposed to the elements with only a tarpaulin to keep the rain off. But British locomotives tend to run backwards more often than not, and on a cold, rainy day, this seems like a really unpleasant place to be. Not so with Murdoch. He has a British Rail standard design cab, which has actual seats, controls that you can reach while in the seat, and the controls are ones that you don't have to wrestle with. The regulator is the pull-out type from the ceiling. The reverser is a screw reverse with a really cool-looking fine control. And the back of the cab is also enclosed by a set of rear windows and another apron that goes across the roof to keep the rain out. He also has smoke deflectors to help direct smoke and steam up and away from the cab. The only thing I don't like much is that Murdoch is left-hand drive. Personally, as a Yank, I'm very used to having all the controls on the other side, so my hand-eye coordination would be off, and sometimes even in simulator games I get a little bit dizzy if I'm driving a left-hand drive thing. But it's a fair trade-off in order to get an engine that has a seat. He also may or may not have Westinghouse air brakes. The 9Fs allocated to Tyndall had air brakes fitted for hauling some of the big iron ore cars, and personally I prefer Westinghouse air brakes to vacuum brakes. It also helps that Murdoch, as a character, has a very easygoing, quiet, and shy sort of personality, and as a result, he has never once been involved in a crash. He's never been in any sort of serious collision, derailment, or other big insurance claim. If I were crewing Henry, Gordon, or James or whatever, they would probably say something mean to one of the little engines in the morning.
Look at me. I'd rather not, retorted James. You're not a pleasant sight, and wouldn't understand the needs of a really important engine.
I'd spend the rest of the day just waiting for whatever act of fate or freak accident or confusion and delay would befall us.
Oh, help! Cried James. Go away!
Every day, Murdoch is oiled, prepped in the morning, goes out, hauls whatever he's assigned in all kinds of weather, comes back to the roundhouse unscathed, and at the end of the day, he empties the self-emptying fire grate into the ash pan. His driver would remove the screens from the self-cleaning smoke box and sweep out the rest of the ashes. Walk over, check to see that there's still grease in the self-greasing Timken roller bearings, and then put the handbrake on, he's good to go for next time. That is more like it. However, I have heard some rumors that there is a Pennsylvania Railroad on K4 on Sodor. I don't know how they got it there, but it has all of the features listed above with Murdoch, but also has power reverse, electric lights, and a Worthington feed water heater, despite being built 45 years earlier, in which case, sorry Murdoch. Empties east, empties west!